And you know, if it wasn't for Candy, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have my career. I wouldn't have worked with so many people on so many different projects. She was a person that they say that, you know, you get the wind behind your wings. That was Candy. She believed in me. I didn't even believe in me. She believed in me, and she, you know, helped support me and encourage me to work on so many things. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful friendship. And I can hardly believe I'm still here and Candy's not here. You know, it's hard to even think about sometimes, because she was, you know, even when she was no longer, you know, that active in conservation, Julie and I and a few other folks, Sandy Batty, Cindy Aaron Clue, we would all go over to her house and bring her favorite wine, her favorite ice cream, some treats, and we would just sit and reminisce. And we did that almost every month, you know, until COVID hit. And of course, COVID made things so much worse. Not being able to see her towards the end of her life. But I think all I really want to say is, you know, how appreciative I am for her friendship and all of your friendship. And I see so many familiar faces here that I worked with over the years. You know, it just enriched my life and made my life something I could have never, ever imagined if it wasn't having somebody like her and all of you and who have that same experience of having worked with her and being pushed by her. So thank you. It's just a tremendous honor. I really appreciate it very much.
So I'm very excited to introduce one of our trustees, who is a force to be reckoned with, a member of our Natural Heritage Committee, Dr. Sara Webb, who is a professor emeritus from Drew University. She can speak for herself, but she is just a wonderful friend, and she's doing everything she can to help us protect the forests of the Highlands. Sara.
Well, it's really a great honor to be able to speak to this group. I'm honored to be on the board of the trustees of the Highlands Coalition, and I've just become such a fan. When I retired from teaching 4 years ago now, I swore I would never do anything that involved meetings, nothing. And there's Julia for you. You know? I mean, this incredible organization gets things done, has influence in ways that just are beyond my imagination. I've been, you know, stressing about the destruction of our forests and keeping it inside, not keeping it inside, but making no difference with it. And hopefully I'm able to contribute a bit as being part of this forest task force and part of the Natural Heritage Committee on all these incredible environmental preservation efforts that we've had. Now, I'm going to talk about our forests, biodiversity, climate defense, and the logging controversy in particular. Now, so many of you are already very deeply involved with this effort to stop that sort of management for our conservation forests. Many of you are spending hours and hours, as I am, on these task force meetings, and hopefully there will be some change coming, but it's certainly not a done deal. But I want to talk about this subject, and given that so many of you are very knowledgeable about it, I want to just be brief in giving some background and provide more energy with the scientific case for keeping our forests intact, especially our mature natural forests. So, you know, at one time, all of New Jersey was forested completely. You hear other arguments that it was cleared by Native Americans, and to a great extent it was not, as it turns out from recent archaeological evidence. By 1850, New Jersey was pretty much deforested, and in 1926, we were at a complete cleared state with all the iron use of logs for the fuel and for everyone else's fuel. Anyway, today we have more forests now, and you've probably all seen this map where the green areas are where we do see forests today. The highlands up in the top, the pinelands, of course, in the south are more continuous than the rest of the state. We have this, is there like a pointer thing that I can use? I guess probably not. So I'll just, I can point. So the forests have returned to some extent, but certainly not to where they once were. And you all know this, just remind ourselves that we need our water for our forest for the water. I don't know if 85% is the right number or 70%, but it's a really large percentage of New Jersey relies on our forest to protect the land that filters and maintains our water supplies, groundwater and surface water. Our forests are incredible for climate defense. Of course, they mitigate erosion and flooding and air pollution and heat. And the biodiversity is, of course, phenomenal. So we all know, I don't need to tell you these things. Our forests are really important. So we have very diverse forests, amazing 77 different species of native forest trees. That's another lecture for another day. But you know the major differences between Highlands and the South, where how we manage them is very different from how we should manage or care for them in the North with the fire adaptations there. And the disturbance regime in North Jersey is not to have big openings like a clear cut, but to have small individual tree falls here and there in the forest, generating diversity. So there's really no natural analog in the North for today's logging. But we have these threats to New Jersey, of course, development, invasive plants, deer, loss of native plants, and this recent surge in logging is a great threat. And it's a really big problem, because when we do the logging, these other problems, invasive plants and deer, and the lack of native plants, I mean, nothing comes back except invasive species. So we really need to leave the canopy intact. So this is a kind of themed slide for my brief presentation today. We need to protect our canopy trees from what's called thinning. And there's two major reasons to do that. I think we're all fighting for these forests. We know logging is wrong. It feels wrong when you're there, and we have a sense of all the services. But number one is for climate resilience. We need to have these trees pumping all that carbon out of the atmosphere and bringing it in to their wood and into the ecosystem. And then we need them to be storing all that carbon. And the small trees don't bring in as much carbon as fast. They don't store nearly as much carbon as larger trees, even per acre, nor per individual. That is really important. Of course, to preserve biological diversity is another major driving force between our need to have our forests left intact. We need to keep our logs. We need to restrict the sale of wood products, keep the wood in place. And we really do also need to do restoration of these places that have been so decimated by deer and invasive species. I'm doing a lot of that in the University Forest Preserve. That's another separate story that I won't get into, but I want to just point out that we are missing our understory, and logging is taking off the canopy where there is no understory to return. So we really have to take this approach of protection, proforestation, and restoration. Proforestation means protect your biggest, their oldest trees, their most established forests, in order to keep carbon in place and not up in the atmosphere. So this is what we're all aiming for. Now, I was really stunned some years back to hear that we were talking about forest stewardship plans, which sounded wonderful. It sounds like apple pie and motherhood. Stewardship. We all want to be good stewards. And it is, what's going on is never called logging. And when I use the word logging, I am told that's not what we're doing. And you've all heard that too, from those who advocate the style of management that removes the canopy and sells the wood. But it's called stewardship, management, and also there's these terms in silviculture, in forestry, for different ways of managing forests. There's the clear cut, they never use that phrase, but there's shelter wood cuts and seed tree cuts, where you leave a few seed trees. Sometimes we call this thinning. Sometimes we call thinning taking away 90% of the trees on Sparta Mountain in a patch of forest. Habitat improvement, management, forest stewardship. So you will hear people that are advocating the style of managing our land saying we are not logging. And that's what they tell us when we're in dialogue about how to change the way they're managing a certain part of Sparta Mountain. It's not logging. And it is a word that they abhor because it sounds so negative, but it's negative. It sounds negative because it is. So here's a picture of one of the logged areas in Sparta Mountain. Here, 16 football fields were cleared of some of the oldest oaks, I think, in northern New Jersey. We've counted tree rings on the stumps here, many well over 150 years old, with quite a lot of young trees that also came down. So our most contiguous, most intact and oldest forests are the ones that are being targeted in northern New Jersey for logging. And that doesn't make sense if you're trying to do stewardship. Those trees are the ones that can be sold, or they can be traded in exchange for the logging services. I don't want to talk about financial incentives because it's not my bailiwick. I know that many people doing this believe it's the right thing. There are people in the business of forest management and that involves forest harvest, and I have no opposition to that. I just have the opposition in my heart and in my brain to applying this method to our public conservation forests. The justifications are just incredibly weak, and I want to remind us that we have to call this management by logging what it is and try to get it reduced. So this is just wrong for northern New Jersey forests, and it is happening very heavily in our conservation lands, our state wildlife management areas in particular. And it's also happening in non-state public lands. Mullen Dickerson had one of these stewardship plans, which was much effort, and probably many of you suspended. Other public lands, even nature centers that hire certain people to give them stewardship plans, are told they should log out what they've got. Here's a picture of a map of Sparta Mountain. And Sparta Mountain, over the coming years. One chunk this year, next year, large areas, until the whole thing's involved. So we have a nice diverse forest, the light forest, the late forest, and a little bit older forest. That's the sort of language that's in these stewardship plans. But guess what? There's not going to be any forest coming in these places. And to say that we're trying to diversify by producing young forest this is not the place to do that. It should be happening not on our most mature, intact, biodiverse forest. We can make young forests out of old farm fields. We can make young forests out of the disturbed woodlands that are full of invasive species across the state in places that are typically not in conservation preserves. But despite the opposition, and it's been really powerful opposition from a wonderful team that the Highlands Coalition leadership, Julia, Elliott, Zach, and also New Jersey Forest Watch and many other organizations have really been, gotten a place at the table to talk out changes. Some modest adjustments have been made in several recent years, to the logging plans on the basis of our tree ring data and our arguments and the very adept skills of people unlike me. I'm just a scientist. I just measure the trees and don't know what to do with that information. So it's a collaboration for sure. But we are in this situation where the scientific community and land conservation experts and many of you and many more citizens are really alarmed and have been working very hard for, I don't know if it's been a decade since we started on Sparta Mountain, but it feels like it's been a century, but every year working away to try to get each of these plans changed. And these are really large clearings. These are not little habitat improvement projects where you clear a few trees. These are not little biodiversity enrichment areas where you cut down one or two trees or 10 trees and put in some species that you are missing and maybe put a deer fence around them. These are vast clearings with extensive edges. And these areas, the edges promote deer and the openings and the edges promote invasive species, which are going to enter any forest you clear in northern New Jersey. As you all know, if you have any land that you're involved with, it's a battle, it's expensive. And between the two factors of deer and invasive species, we don't get a new forest back. So they're just claims for logging management that are just not accurate. They say we have too little young forest, we need more edge habitat, we need more young forest. Really, in New Jersey, it's hard to accept those arguments. And yet this management continues. They claim the forest is unhealthy, the forests are all the same age, that logging restores the oak forest. We cut down your oldest oak trees to get more oak forest, really? And the small trees aren't going to come in? I'm getting a little excited here, but it's so nice to have this sympathetic group. I know many of you are very involved with this forest task force, and we've been in conversation individually and as small groups as well. So let's just make sure we go in this with our facts clear and straight, because we've been told so much that's not correct. Our forests do not need thinning to be healthy. They do not need to be thinned to be healthy. If you're trying to grow the most timber in a period of time, largest trees, you plant them close together and then you thin them out. This is not plantation forestry. If you're trying to grow timber on natural lands and you want to get forest products, you still don't thin them in the way that's being done. But that's not our goal in New Jersey. We don't have a big timber industry. We don't need to make money from our timber. We also have to be aware that there's much less carbon being taken up, and I mentioned this before, by a large old tree than a bunch of small trees, and much more stored. So the idea that trees are growing more slowly with age is not accurate. Here's a picture of a stump that dozens of stumps on several different post management phenomenon to be quite widespread. These trees are not unhealthy. Their centers were not rotten. These were not trees that needed to be removed for any reason other than to get the logs. And the logs are taken away. Now, if you're really doing conservation logging, you leave the wood there, you leave the branches, it's habitat. But that's not what's been going on. So where do we turn? We need to look at science. And I think everyone realizes that science is on our side, but we have so many claims in webinars and in testimony and in reports and plans, state wildlife and state forest plans, statements that are asserted that are not accurate, that are wrong, that are not the right scientific conclusion to draw. These are two examples. These are a couple examples of articles, the references to articles that you can find on the Highlands Coalition website that show very clearly by Nobel Prize winners and other prominent scientists. The stuff that gets published in the peer-reviewed scientific literature is the only thing you can trust these days, because people will say absolutely anything on their Twitter account or in a report or in a webinar. And so this is where we need to go. And that's one of the things that we scientists have been providing to the group, is access to this literature. And there's a summary of some of these articles on Highlands Coalition website that show absolutely that reforestation, saving our old forests, mitigates climate change and serves the greatest good, is that one title. Rate of tree carbon accumulation increases continuously with tree size. And then I have to say quickly that this also can be abused, because we have people promoting logging, citing scientific articles too, but they're also citing them inaccurately, as in the case of the one that's right here. This was a prestigious journal, Rate of Forest Regrowth and Carbon Sink Dynamics, and it says regrowing forests provide more carbon storage than old growth forests. But guess what? That's because we have more young forest, secondary forest, as it's called, regrowth forest, than we have old growth forest. And if you look at it, that's what it says. But that's not what people are using this article to support. So it's something that you need to tap into to run the arguments, and that's where the scientists like myself are happy to help anyone. And then the other weapons, so great. Here's one of the billboards that New Jersey Forest Watch put together and put up with New Jersey Highlands Coalition co-sponsorship and Highlands Preservation Alliance, trying to get people aware of what's going on. And this is just awesome. I would never have thought of doing this. I just sit and write little scientific rebuttals. This is fabulous. So we have this climate change argument that is just completely false. We need to keep our old forests, our established forests, intact as a carbon storage and carbon sink. And now we're also finding that the way that they choose where to log at Sparta and then some of the other plans is not prioritizing forest interior species. And we're seeing severe damage to wetland habitat and vernal pools by the process of logging out the wood, often in seasons when they shouldn't be doing so, or without a protective covering over the wetlands. But this is not good for wildlife. So we have to go, this is my little topic slide here. We have to look at the ecological science. So it said something about wood, and I don't know if I'm running out of time here, but I am I up? Okay, all right. We need to keep the wood on the ground. habitat for baby trees, habitat for a huge proportion of our beneficial birds, and they need the wood, they need the cavities. When trees fall and are left there, you see the kind of reddish brown part. We take away that carbon storage, not only does it hurt the climate, but it hurts the ecosystem. So we need to protect the canopy. We need to have this pro-forestation approach to our forests for climate resilience. There's a picture of one of New Jersey's barrier islands breached during one of our hurricanes. So we need to plant more trees. We need to stop cutting down our mature forests. It's not enough to just plant more trees. We have to also stop cutting them down. Here's one of the large trees that we were very sad to see had been cut down. And you look from above, you see also these clearings. Our forests also need, well, we need carbon sequestration by the trees, and we also need to keep our forest habitats, because a lot of our species are going to go extinct as the climate changes. They're going to run up to the edge of their habitat and not be able to live there anymore as it gets hotter or drier. And if we have a nice corridor going through New Jersey, and that's the Nature Conservancy has mapped these appropriate corridors, a lot of extinctions will be avoided. So keeping all the habitat intact, not cutting it down, is also valuable in that way. And a map that shows the shift that we're going to see in the forest that we have today on the right, and then on the left, where our different kinds of forests are going to be moving, or if they don't go. So finally, what happens if we log long-term? We have what's called empty forest syndrome and invaded forest syndrome in our forests today. You may see greenery under your forest trees, but not very much of it's native unless you have deer fence around you. And so the best defense against these syndromes is to keep the canopy intact, not open it. Don't create openings, don't clear a forest. That invites in invasive species and it gives you more deer. So finally, the world needs timber, but we really need to get it from New Jersey's forests. We don't really have a very big industry, although I have great respect for those who are in that field. But we have our high population densities, all you know so well. Our water depends on our water, forests, on our forests. And so for the loss of carbon storage and uptake alone, but all these ecological reasons, we need to continue to try to stop this kind of logging. And I'm so grateful to each of you and to the Highlands Coalition for playing a very lead role in the current convoluted task force that we're trying to influence in a positive way. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So our next presentation is the 2022 Vision and Leadership Award, which we have given several years now to somebody who has typically an elected person, not always an elected person, but typically an elected person, because it takes real leadership and initiative and vision to see what we can do to protect our environment. And these people are fairly rare. We are thrilled to bits to recognize Mayor Soriano, Michael Soriano from Parsippany, who sadly is no longer the mayor of Parsippany. Maybe that'll change one day. But when he was elected mayor, he came to a town that had been going through the conformance process to the Highlands Regional Master Plan. And its new leadership decided it was inconvenient for some of the things that they wanted to do. So they abandoned it. They actually made up reasons for the reasons that they were unconforming from the Highlands Regional Master Plan. And I was very proud of Elliot and Zach, I believe it, wasn't it? Who was the person who worked with you in Pacific? It was Zach, wasn't it? Who were able to show that, in fact, the Parsippany Council had been very deliberately misled about the reasons why Parsippany was leaving conformance. And Mayor Soriano reversed that process. And he did it in a way that I think was clearly persuasive, because while he is no longer the mayor of Parsippany, Parsippany is still going through the conformance process, thanks to the mayor's leadership. And so Parsippany, the most populous town in the Highlands, it needed that kind of leadership, and the Highlands needed that kind of leadership and that kind of example. And we are thrilled today, Mayor, if you would like to come up to recognize you with this leadership award. It is presented to the Honorable Michael Soriano for his leadership as mayor of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills, Morris County, by re-engaging the municipality in the process of conformance to the Highlands Regional Master Plan, which was withdrawn under a prior administration for reasons that were subsequently shown to be misleading and inaccurate, for enacting a municipal plastic bag ban, and for opening the Jersey City Reservoir to public recreation by initiating the planning and approval of a 5-mile perimeter mixed-use trail. All spectacular projects. With thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands. Congratulations.
Okay, I didn't do this on my own. That's for sure. I mean, when it comes to leadership, besides learning that from my dad, I learned that in the Boy Scouts, and I learned a lot in the Boy Scouts to get me to where I am now. Certainly, running the Nature Lodge at 10 Mile River Scout Camps, Camp Kiowa in Narrowsburg, New York, was my first lessons in environmental science and forestry. So, who would thought that would get this kid from Queens here? But that was important because it taught me the importance of learning about my environment, learning about nature. Now, I have 4 guests here with me from Parsippany that I want to thank for coming out here and supporting me. Elaine Dolsky. Hi, Elaine. And her save applause for the end. And her and her escort, Ken Dolsky. Hello, Ken. How are you? Judy Hernandez. Hello, Judy. Judy, who's, by the way, shameless political plug, who is running for freeholder in Morris County. Okay. And yeah, right, Commissioner. Thank you. I can't get rid of that word. My goodness. And Nick Homia. Thank you so much. These are 4 people that kept me honest, that kept me on track. And right as soon as I walked into the door on my first day as mayor, the second day, the questions were, when are you getting in the Highlands? Well, I'll tell you something else I learned in the Boy Scouts. Prior proper planning prevents a piss poor performance. And during the transition, months before getting sworn in as mayor, I sat down with a planner that I wanted to do our master plan. And I said, I want to be conformed to the Highlands because we've been talking about it for quite some time as just citizen activists in Parsippany. And I started learning how important it was. But when so we began planning getting into the Highlands before I even became mayor. But when it really became important to me was in late January of my first year, is when my good friend and mentor, Mayor Mimi Letts, formerly sat on the Highlands Council, had one ask of me and said, get us into the Highlands. Please do this for me. Because I was doing everything I could to carry on her legacy. She was a mentor, she was a friend, and I loved her. So to me, she was a very small woman, about 5'2". She was a giant. And I always felt like I was in her shadow and her shoes were way too big for me to fill. But I did everything I could to make sure that we got in there. I also want to thank Julia for giving me therapy lessons, the therapy sessions once in a while with having to deal with getting into the Highlands and so all the hurdles I had to get through. So thank you for the counseling on that. we have a lot of work cut out for us as activists, as stewards for the environment. Certainly now. Right now, the Supreme Court is about to hear arguments about repealing the Clean Water Act. And quite frankly, I don't trust the Supreme Court, this particular court, to do the right thing. And I think next year, when they finally make their decisions before their session's over, we're going to be very upset. And we're going to have to channel that energy into action. We're going to have to fuel it into our activism. We know what's at stake. I do not need to lecture this group because I'm actually here to learn from you on how important this is and how it's going to impact us here, especially in New Jersey. You're listening to a person whose house flooded in 2011 during Hurricane Irene in the lower part of Parsippany and Lake Hiawatha, which was very much a lake for that month as well. So I am here with you. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. Thank you very much for listening to me. My name is Michael Soriano, and I'm a recovering politician, and I am an activist and a steward of the environment. Thank you very much.
So I am thrilled to bits. You know, we did intend for these meetings to get shorter, and then the leadership of the Highlands Council changed, and the new leadership of the Highlands Council has so many exciting ideas to share that we really had to invite Ben Spinelli to come and talk to us. And ironically, he's the one who helped Parsippany with that 5-mile trail in his former life. That's just one of the things he did. He's also a former trustee of the New Jersey Highlands Council. Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm being very slow. And yes, as a consultant, he advised Kean University on the value of, he had the vision to see what this place could become, and worked with Kean University to create the Skylands campus, which I get the impression he's quite proud of. Yes. Anyway, we have had two former mayors of Chester Township on our board. We also have Bill Cogger as a trustee of ours. And Bill said to me the other day, I haven't seen Ben so excited for 20 years. So here he is, he's going to come and share some of his excitement with us and tell us what he's going to be trying to do in the New Jersey Highlands.
Thank you, Julia. If you asked me a year ago if I was going to attend the Highlands Coalition's annual meeting now, I would say, yeah, sure, I was going to be here, but I never imagined in a million years would be in the role that I'm in today. I can't tell you how pleased and honored I am to have the opportunity to work with the great Highlands staff and to be able to have my job be pursuing the important mission of the Highlands Council. And what I'd like to do is share some of my insights with you that I've gotten from my first 8 weeks on the job, and hopefully you'll agree that there's a lot of hard work that has to be done, but a lot of great things that can be accomplished. The first thing I would like to do, however, is to congratulate Michele on her award and her recognition here today. I wasn't even mayor, and Michele and the newly born Highlands Coalition introduced me to the importance of preserving the region, and really informed a lot of the work that I did as mayor, and led me down a path that's here today. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but it's certainly been exciting, I can tell you that. When I look at where the Highlands Council is today, the first thing I would like to remind everyone is back in 2004, when the Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act was passed, it was passed as emergency legislation. It was in recognition of the loss of the important resources of the Highlands and what that meant to the future of the state of New Jersey. No place can remain economically viable. No place can remain sustainable. No place can remain a good place to live if the drinking water of that place is not protected. And in 2004, New Jersey saw that the resources of the Highlands were in danger, remember the famous graphics that showed how we were losing 7 football fields a day to development, and how important it was to put a halt to that, led to the passage of the Highlands Act and the restrictions that were put in place. So where are we here today, 18 years later, and what has happened? A lot of good has happened in those 18 years. A lot of bad has continued to happen despite the provisions of the act. And what are we going to do about it? Because the Highlands Act is not about today. It's not about what's going on right now. It's a visionary act. It's a planning act. It's something that's supposed to have its greatest impact when all the people in this room are going to be long gone, right? When New Jersey is still a sustainable, livable, great place to live. That I am an unabashed fan of the state of New Jersey, but when New Jersey is still a good place to live 100 years from now or 200 years from now, a lot of that is going to have an awful lot to do with the Highlands Act and the fact that it was put in place. If you want to look for good examples, just look at New York City. Back in the 1800s, they had the vision to set aside the land in the Catskills and the Croton watershed. Right? If you say, what's the footprint of New York City? It's certainly not the 5 boroughs. New York could never exist just on that land alone. It needs the 1 million or so acres that they were able to preserve in the Catskills and in the east shore of the Hudson to provide the drinking water that makes it the vital place that it is today. It's no different for the state of New Jersey. Newark had that same vision too, putting aside the watershed that served as the core of the Highlands area. So what I want to share with you about where I think the Highlands needs to go. First thing I would like to do is talk briefly about what I told my staff. Not everything. It goes on between me and my staff. But what I did tell them were a couple of things that I will share with you. First is that our main mission is to be fierce protectors of the resources of the Highlands. The second is that when we make our decisions, to always look as to how these decisions will appear in the future. Right? If you look back 25 years from now or 50 years from now, you're going to say, man, I don't know who did that, but that was a pretty good idea. Or they're going to look back and say, who was the idiot who thought we should do this? Right? We have a moral obligation to make as many of the former decisions and as few of the latter as we can going forward. So as I did my assessment of the status of the Highlands Council when I came in, a couple of things became evident. First is that there is a great, talented staff there, that there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of passion for the mission of the Highlands place. But the second is that the Highlands has sort of taken a lower profile over the last few years. Ever since the regional master plan was passed, the mantra of the agency has sort of been to keep its head down and to not make a lot of waves. And I think if you know me, that's not going to continue. Right? I take the mission in that I was involved in the advocacy for the passage of the Highlands Act when I was mayor of Chester Township. I still believe in the importance of the act, and I still believe that importance has that multi-generational aspect to it, and that we're just here to pass the baton on, but that it's important for me to take my time here in the seat as executive director and move that mission forward to the greatest extent possible. And towards that end, I think there are a few things that I'd like to share with you that we're going to endeavor to undertake. The first is the most obvious, and that is to advocate for the appointment of a full council. Right now we have a lot of vacancies. Right, 13 vacant or holdover seats. Only 2 of the 15 members are current members, and so we've been working with the governor's office to try to get qualified individuals placed, nominated, and passed through the Senate to give us a full 15-member council. I'm fairly confident that by the beginning of the new year, we should have a full council in place. Right? The second really goes to the notion of where the Highlands Act stands in terms of its importance to the state and its relevance in the state and how the state goes about its affairs. Right, the Highlands Regional Master Plan was created using superior science to any other planning effort that has ever gone on in New Jersey. Right, the science that underlies it, the analysis that went into creating that Highlands Regional Master Plan, the vision that it had, are all superior to anything that the state has ever undertaken. In New Jersey, has always been a leader in the thought process about building a sustainable place to live, because we have to. As the most densely populated state in the country, we have to be able to balance human needs with the resources that support those human needs. And the Highlands Regional Master Plan was truly an achievement in that line. But what's happened is that the Highlands Regional Master Plan is not given its full impact, right? It's not given the full treatment that it should. Right now, it's mandatory in the preservation area that it be followed, and it's voluntary in the planning area. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The science that led to the creation of the Highlands Regional Master Plan is just as valid in the planning area as it is in the preservation area. Merely by crossing the road, and Julia has heard me say this, gravity doesn't exist on one side of the road and cease to exist on the other. Science is the same no matter which side of the road you're on. And that science has to be applied to all of the work that the state undertakes. And the first thing I want to talk about is full recognition of the Highlands Regional Master Plan for anything that occurs within the Highlands by every state agency that's going to do something that impacts the Highlands. That includes the Department of Environmental Protection, the Department of Transportation, DCA, New Jersey Transit, all have to take into account the work, the science, the information, the policies and goals that the Regional Master Plan contains. Whenever they make a decision, that decision can be a permitting decision, it can be an infrastructure investment decision, but any time that something is undertaken by the state, the Highlands Regional Master Plan needs to be consulted and needs to inform what is going to take place, right? And that is number one on my agenda to get that done, right? So, and that includes going back, really rolling back the Christie era changes to the DEP Highlands rules that took the involvement of the Highlands Council out and the consultation of the Highlands Regional Master Plan out of their permitting process. That needs to go back in, right? So that's the second thing. The third thing is and this is going to sound a little harsh, but it's not meant to be. It's just the way things in state government work. That the Christie administration really did two things. It installed members of the Highlands Council who were not always the greatest advocates for the law, although many of them did take that mission very seriously, and they starved the agency of resources. And by not undoing that, we've essentially continued those policies for another 5 years. That's going to end, right? We have to change how we approach the Highlands, because the mission of the agency is more important today in an era of a changing climate, where we put more and more demands on the resources of the Highlands, not just to provide drinking water to the residents of New Jersey, but to do climate mitigation work, really to flood mitigation, carbon sequestration, food production. Right? That's one that often gets overlooked. One of the things that we really need to add to the list is the recognition of prime agricultural soils in the Highlands as a resource that's just as important as the forest and the streams and the intact ecosystem. And for a number of reasons. First of all, because of the land use implications of it. Secondly, because of the contribution agriculture makes now, but will continue to make going into the future for a sustainable economic atmosphere in the Highlands. And the third is going to be for food production in a place that's within proximity to 20 million people, in a place that still gets 50 inches of rain. It may come in different ways, but we still get it. We still get our precipitation. And to be able to produce food in proximity to that many people is going to be an increasingly important capability that the Highlands will bring. One of the things that I think, going back to the resources, I want to be able to staff up the Highlands Council back to where it was before the Christie administration took those resources away. But I would like to add a climate specialist to the staff, an agricultural specialist to the staff, a water engineer to the staff, a restoration specialist to the staff. And those four positions alone should give you an idea about where I believe the agency needs to go. Right? We need to be able to be strong advocates for the agricultural community, right? To make sure that they remain vital and that they remain an important part of the landscape of the Highlands, and an important part of that economy. that we have to understand that when the Highlands Act went into place, we inherited an ecosystem that had been degraded by human activity over that period, over the last 150 to 200 years. Now, the Highlands Act put, to a large part, putting end to those destructive practices, but we have an obligation then to try to reverse what has taken place. And that means doing forest and stream restoration. It means taking care of the lakes of the Highlands to make sure that the land use practices that have led to harmful algae blooms, to make sure that we can undertake projects that are going to reverse that damage. And because it's not just sufficient to say that we stop the damage from occurring, right? We need to be able to look at the role that we play. We are first and foremost a planning agency, right? To understand that having common sense land use, one of the biggest challenges of the Highlands is not the fact that just merely we have to protect the resources, but we have to protect those resources in a place where 800,000 people already live. And we have to be able to balance the needs of the 800,000 people who live there with the needs of the people who rely upon the resources of the Highlands at the same time. It can almost seem like an impossible puzzle to have to solve. But I think we have the resources, we have the knowledge base, hopefully we have I think we have the political will to do it. In fact, I'm pretty sure we do, right? But we have to undertake that mission very seriously. And that includes taking a role in housing policy going forward. It means taking our role in how DEP makes its decisions when it makes permits. It makes taking a role in making sure that prime agricultural land doesn't get converted to uses that are incompatible with the Highlands and incompatible with preserving that as a resource, right? Primarily, we look and say, how can you say that it's a good idea to put 3 million square feet of warehouse space on prime agricultural soils in some place that the Highlands Regional Master Plan recognizes as in the conservation zone next to the Delaware River? If I stack those reasons up and I said, do the decision tree, it doesn't come down to that's a good idea, right? And yet the Highlands understand, however, that the Highlands law itself doesn't put much authority in the hands of the Highlands Council when it comes to activities within the planning area. But what does happen is it has to be recognized that Highlands Regional Master Plan does exist, that the science underlying it does exist, that the science underlying it has to inform even planning area towns when they do their planning. You may not have to conform, but not recognizing the science that's been established or the planning that's been established through the Highlands Regional Master Plan borders on planning malpractice. It does, right? And that they have to reflect what that regional master plan says if they're going to responsibly be doing their jobs in controlling land use at the municipal level. You're free to ignore us, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea. It doesn't mean it's the right thing, right? And having that influence, right? Some of it is going to be through moral authority. I'll call it moral authority, the authority of the intellect of the Highlands. But we're going to have some manner, more than just the DEP regulations, to get into the use that goes on in the planning area. And that's, I don't pretend to have all the answers to that one, but I can tell you that I'm going to work hard to figure that one out, because it's just not right when you look at what the intent of the Highlands Act was when it was passed and what's going on today in the planning area. They don't mesh, right? And we have to find a way to make those things mesh. And so, I think it's certainly going to be an exciting time for me. I can tell you that. I hope that I'm able to lead this agency to accomplishing some of the goals that I just laid out for you. I'm certainly. I forgot. Let's talk about forest and forest management. Two things. Let's talk first of all about climate change. State is doing a climate change plan for the state as a whole. We need to be able to do a Highland specific climate plan for our needs, right? To understand the impacts of climate change on the ecosystem of the Highlands, because they're different than the remainder of the state, and to understand that we have to be able to respond to what the impacts are going to be to the ecosystems of the Highlands, but also understand the role that the Highlands is going to play in helping the entire state be a climate resilient place. The second is when we look at forest management. Now, I know there's been a forest management task force convened. I can't be concerned with what the outcome of that is going to be. We have to come up with a Highland specific forest management set of practices, one that recognizes the unique ecosystem needs of the Highlands and the different circumstances that exist. If you look across the Highlands is a big area. You look from one end to the other, you're going to find heavily impacted forest that's been heavily damaged by human activity, maybe recent agricultural activity. It's new forest, heavily impacted by invasive species, and you're gonna go across the spectrum to some very healthy forest that's still in place. And our Highlands specific forest management practices have to account for all of those conditions and have a science-based, neutrally established set of practices that the Highlands is going to be the go-to place to ask for when you want recommendations about how to manage a forest in the Highlands. The Highlands has to be the place that you go to for all things Highlands, right? And that comes as part of raising our capabilities, attracting the resources that we need to attract, and being the place that is recognized as the authority on managing the Highlands for the long term. And I think that's about it. But thank you for having me.
So I know there are maybe one or two people who have questions for Ben. So we just have a couple of minutes for that. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask, Sylvia?
Sure. And so that's what really comes down to coming up with Highland specific management practices, right? And understanding. If you look back to, right, look, people will argue all they want about how the planning area and the preservation area were created when the act was created. I can tell you, I do know that one of the number one reasons why some place ended up in the preservation area was because of healthy, intact core forest. Right, and understanding that's one of that may be the most important resource of the Highlands that needs to be protected, right? And that's going to be the guiding principle for us. Now, what authority we have, right? Again, goes back to our intellectual, our moral, our ability to convince other people, or by putting that science out there and telling people you ignore that science at your own peril, right? I can't make you follow it, but if you don't, you're going to have to answer as to why you didn't follow the experts on the Highlands and the practices that you undertake. That's the only way we can really move that forward.
Are there any other questions? Tom?
Yeah. I was gonna say I'm not a lawyer, but I am a lawyer. but I can't give you legal advice on that one. But what I can tell you is that there are two things that come out of what you just said. First of all, the state executive order 4 had to do with the state plan, right? And understanding that there were places that were really were developed high intensity development and extension of infrastructure should be discouraged, right? That's planning area 5 and 4B. And executive order 4, and Jim, right, as being one of the originators of the New Jersey state plan, understands this better than anyone, that the idea were all the state agencies were supposed to respect the state plan in what they did and not do anything inconsistent with the vision of the state plan. What I'm advocating for is that the Highlands Regional Master Plan be given that same respect, right? And that every state agency has to look to what the Highlands Regional Master Plan has to say about that particular location. And beyond what the state plan was done at a much higher level than the regional master plan was. The regional master plan really honed into what resources were on the ground. Those land use designations within the Highlands Regional Master Plan were achieved through a very rigorous process that went through a whole matrix of decisions that ended up where that particular designation would be. So if it's a protection zone, or if it's a conservation zone, or if it's an environmentally constrained zone, it wasn't achieved by someone shooting paintballs at a map with different colored paint. It was done through a scientific process that needs to be respected. And it needs to be respected by the municipalities when they do their planning, and it needs to be respected by the state agencies when they do their permitting or infrastructure investments, right? And that is the underlying principle that has to guide when those decisions are made, right? That's an answer that's not quite telling you what to do, but it should inform how you go about making your argument.
Any other questions? Yes, Ken.
Sure, and understand, right, that exemption does exist to permit that activity to go on, but that doesn't mean that the activity should go on any way that someone wants to, right? That's why it's important for the Highlands Council to step in to come up with a series of guidelines and best management practices that are based in science and based on what's best for the Highlands and the Highlands ecosystem to be a guide for how people will undertake those activities. And again, we can't mandate how it's done, but again, we can inform how it should be done. And as I said before, ignore the science and ignore our best management practices at your peril.
So we're going to move on because we've got a few more things that we have to get done, but I just want to thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
So the New Jersey Highlands Coalition could not do what we do without some wonderful people who volunteer their time for the issues that they care about. People protect the places they love. And we see that over and over again in the New Jersey Highlands. And this next award that we recognize people who are remarkable volunteers is named after Wilma Frey, who I think of as our mother hen for the Highlands. She's no longer living in the Highlands. She lives in Massachusetts now. She is retired, sort of, perhaps, maybe. Yes, Michelle's doing this. This is right. Wilma knows that she's technically retired, but she really can't help herself. Anyway, she still gets involved with a lot of things. But we are very excited. I want to bring a couple of people up to the podium. Dwight Toscano, please, and Elliot Ruger, who are going to help me give this year's Wilma Frey Volunteer Award. I asked Dwight to come up because Dwight helps us with our art show. I mean, he is a spectacular photographer, nature photographer. If you have never seen Dwight's photography, I urge you to check out his website. It is amazing. And he does beautiful, beautiful work. And he gives us tremendous amounts of time. All the artists really want to do this because it's Dwight. But I guess they do. Great respect for him. But we have been blessed recently with a spectacular volunteer. And I don't know if you'd like to say a little bit about her.
The annual juried art show, Highlands Art Show, started out as a feature of the Highlands Festival at Waterloo back in 2015. It started out, it was Dwight's idea, and it was his baby for a couple of years. And every year it has continued to grow in the quality of submissions, in the excitement of the artists. And, you know, we no longer have a festival, but we still have a juried art show that now is shown at an affiliate of the Smithsonian, which is the Morris Museum. And it's also going to find a home at a newly renovated community facility on Main Street in Boonton, which is the Maxfield's Firehouse, the old firehouse with the turret, very cool place. And because of, well, Dwight sort of took a step back, and a gallery owner, curator, who was really a center of artistic expression in this part of Morris County around Boonton, took it over from Dwight. And she's pretty much doing it on her own with some help from Dwight. And she has just done a tremendous job bringing the caliber of art to this event. And for me, it's really important because it's not just about, the Highlands is not just about water and trees and science. It's also about incredible natural beauty. And this is the way we engage the people who feel that, to express it and express it in ways that it excites other people. And it's a really wonderful event. So, Dwight has more to say.
When I was driving up today, I parked behind Elliot, and he's had this bumper sticker on the back of his car that says Earth, and the letters ART are highlighted in red, bold red, very brilliant red. And it just reminded me how much art, how much his voice, art has been for the environment. Whether you go back to the Hudson River School painters, or the writers that we know, Henry David Thoreau and Rachel Carson, Edward Abbey, my favorite. Music, Aaron Copland, who doesn't think of, I think the Highlands whenever I hear Appalachian Spring. I did not know that. That's very cool. I like that. So anyway, art has always been a voice for the environment, and it continues to be a voice. Look at photographers like Ansel Adams and everyone who's followed, including myself. Go on Instagram and you'll see millions and millions of photographs and paintings too, and other forms of art. But many, if not most of them, reflect our love as species of the natural world around us. And I think that voice has led to very successful conservation efforts in this country and elsewhere. And that's our goal here with the Highlands exhibit. That's been the goal all along. Now, I'm not an experienced gallerist. I'm just a photographer. I kind of took the idea on just adding to the Highlands Festival. I thought it might be kind of fun. And then we just thought maybe we should carry it on and continue and try to build on what we did at the festival. It started in a barn on a wall, just a big barn board wall. I think some of the photos were tacked on. And now it's kind of, we have a world-class exhibit, world-class artists. I kind of hit a wall. I had a vision for it, but I didn't know how to take it any further. And I thought of Donna, and it's an experienced gallerist, has a great eye for art, and is also a very talented photographer. Reached out to her, she took the ball and ran with it. And now we have this series of exhibits that are spectacular. And if you look at the website, you see some of the artwork that we've hosted and that we presented. She has so many ideas how to do this. And she's so much more experienced than I am and skilled at this, both in dealing with the artists and dealing with venues. It's far more than I could ever have imagined. And Donna, I can't thank you for building this thing. So come on up and
So, presented to Donna Compton, curator, the annual Highlands Juried Art Show, who has grown the event to become a premier showcase in the region for landscape, wildlife, and abstract painting, photography, and sculpture, bringing a vital community to understand and support our advocacy. With thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands. Presented to you, Donna.
When I opened my first art gallery in 2004, I wanted to name it Highlands Art Gallery because we lived in California for several years, and when we came back, I realized how much I really loved the Highlands. I grew up in Dover and was romping in Hedden Park well before it was a park when I was a kid, catching frogs and turtles, and it really, had a great effect on me. And so fast forward, 15 years later, I finally, closed my gallery for the pandemic. And just before that, my friend said to me, Donnie, you had some great exhibits, but you should maybe pick an exhibit to have that's really different, just something that's really meaningful and close to your heart. Just think of something, whatever it is. So then Dwight and Elliot approached me about helping with the Highlands art exhibits. And there it was, it was like destined. And so we've had, I put on, 2 exhibits, or 3 of them actually. And our next one is going to be at our 10th annual, or the 9th annual is going to be in Basking Ridge at a preserved farm. And then the 10th is going to be, thanks to Dwight, going to be we'll celebrate at the Morris Museum, which is really prestigious. But I thought, how great it would be to bring the exhibits to Newark and Jersey City and some of the urban areas that get their water from the Highlands, so that those people who have probably no idea when they turn on the faucet where this water is coming from, that is so vital, critical. And so I thought maybe if we could do that, that was, it's my next idea. Because then if people down there would be enlightened about the Highlands, they could maybe come and visit, and their appreciation would grow, and then they would, and their understanding of the importance of this place. And then they would vote for legislation to continue the work of everybody here and more, so of all the other people. So that's the vision, and I want to thank Julia and Elliot and Dwight for helping so much to carry Dwight's vision forward, and I'm very happy to have this award.
Yep.
Which is Peter. And Berkshire and,
Next award, Wilma Frey Award, is for Peter Schneider, his very loving wife, Joanne, and Bob Shore, who couldn't be here for now it's the biannual car trek. And this is an opportunity for us to really show off the Highlands and to people who would never really consider themselves environmentalists, but they get a tour of the Highlands where they end up saying, I can't believe this is New Jersey. Where are we? It's the Highlands. And they change. And we provide them with these turn-by-turn directions, usually involving, it's a 70, 75-mile drive based on a theme. We've done the Morris Canal, we've done the Musconetcong Valley, the one that's coming in on the 22nd, 23rd is industrial archaeology of the Highlands. And Peter and Bob really helped make this happen. They understand from a car rally perspective how to get people in and out safely, and where to begin and where to end. And we've become real partners. And it's really become a great event that people really appreciate. People who are regulars do it all the time, and always new people who try for the first time, and they become regular fans. So we really appreciate.
Joanne has been integral to helping make this. So even though your name is not on the board,
So Peter, why don't you come up and
Joanne, do you want to come too? No.
So Peter, we present this to you, the board member and regional executive of the Sports Car Club of America, Northern New Jersey region, for contributing his leadership, knowledge, and guidance, making the semi-annual Highlands Car Trek a premier fundraising and educational event with a loyal and growing following. With thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope to see everybody on October 23rd.
And then our last two awards today in Wilma Frey's recognition, the Wilma Frey Highlands volunteers, are two people who, against extraordinary odds, are doing remarkable work. Now, I know that this is being recorded, but I am going to say this anyway. Phillipsburg is a strange place, and it has really peculiar politics. But despite that, Dave Morissette and Stuart Ridley have been doing remarkable work with the Phillipsburg Environmental Watch. And I would like to invite Dave to come up and accept the awards for both he and Stuart. I can barely tell you what it is that they're trying to do, but they did end up suing the Phillipsburg Council, really a former council, over an ordinance that should never have been approved. And we have not yet heard from the court on their decision, but we are keeping our fingers tight crossed that if David is successful, if Pew is successful, that this warehouse with its back to the river, surrounded by these overburdened communities, will, 500,000 square feet is a lot of truck traffic, that it will not be built. But I salute you in your very unusual community for doing really courageous work.
Well, thank you very much. As many of the folks here know, when you're up against a developer that's doing something that's not good for the community,
You're often fighting people that are very powerful and have a lot of resources. And it takes a lot to move forward to go against something like that. In our case, we had some organization initially. We had the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, the Delaware River Keepers, CFSD, and a couple of people got started. And with the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, they helped us get more organized. And we started a group, Phillipsburg Environmental Watch, which will be a continuing organization. Unfortunately, the other members of Phillipsburg Environmental Watch couldn't make it. Would have been great to have Stuart here too. We do have Jennifer Winisco here. Come on up, Jennifer. Jennifer is one of the members of the Phillipsburg Environmental Watch. We're a group of 8 people, and all 8 of us bring different talents to the group. And Jennifer's assistance has been monumental in helping us get resources to fight the lawsuit. So thank you, Jennifer.
Sarah Monumental again has just become responsible for running. She's our events manager now at the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, which is cool. But this award is presented to David Morissette, and there's a similar one for Stuart, of Phillipsburg Environmental Watch, for his steadfast leadership and commitment to bettering the community of Phillipsburg in Warren County, New Jersey, with thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. So a couple of years ago, we started a different award because of the example of somebody who stepped up unbidden to help her organization when somebody had to step away. And she just did an amazing job. And we didn't think that anybody was going to recognize her. So it has really become a tradition now that we also offer what we call our Above and Beyond Awards. Thank you. And we are giving 3 of them this year. And I am going to present the first one, and Elliot the other 2. I am thrilled to introduce you to Linda and Butch Van Severs, who are just remarkable people. They are the kind of people that you want in any grassroots organization because they are the backbone of those organizations. They turn up, they do the work, they bring the talents and expertise that they have. In their case, Linda worked for years as a legal secretary, and it is amazing how incredibly useful that experience has been, both to CFSD, where she has been amazingly helpful, and to the very brave group in Harmony that tried to stop those the solar plant in Harmony on the 600 acres of prime agricultural soils. And Butch, who, I mean, they come to all the meetings. They're not afraid to stand up and challenge people of authority. But Butch is also an amazing photographer. He's a very passionate environmentalist. There he was last night. Was it just last night? At the at the White Township Planning Board meeting, challenging the developer because of the presence that he has discovered of mussels in the Delaware River that will be impacted by the groundwater that he has found is now seeping in springs off this site, that he has photographic images of the site, which I hate to tell people is really not particularly helpful from an environmental standpoint, but the snow geese are beautiful. They are an amazing phenomenon. They're just not protected because there are a lot of them. They do produce a lot of nutrients too for the site. Free fertilizer, I think, for the farm fields. But they are a real feature of the local community that people just love. And trying to protect this astonishing vernal pool that has been plowed under year after year after year and comes back year after year after year, so that earlier the developer brought an 18-wheeler full of topsoil and tried to fill it. And it still came back. And it still was filled with obligates and invertebrates, and it just won't quit. And it is people like you, Butch and Linda, who really keep everybody honest. Keep everybody honest, keep everybody working hard by your example and your leadership. Even though you don't think of yourselves perhaps as leaders, I certainly do. And so I hope you come up and accept this award. They're modest people who shouldn't be modest. Presented to Linda and Butch Van Setters as members of Citizens for Sustainable Development for their formidable and committed advocacy, for always showing up, for generously sharing their wisdom, and for their unwavering support, protecting the environment of the communities of southwestern Warren County and throughout the Highlands. With thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the New Jersey Highlands.
Thank you for the ovation. That's the first time in my life I ever had an ovation like that. So just a couple words. Linda and I grew up in Phillipsburg, moved to Harmony Township when we were very young, and it was a wonderful place. And little by little, I could just see all this going away, you know, development. And then when the warehouse came along, that put me over the top. The two of us, we just didn't want to see this happen. So we found out about this organization that was just beginning, the Citizens, and I told Linda, I'm going to go to a meeting and check it out. Well, here we are. Enough said about that. So I don't know if you want to say anything.
Well, the next meeting I went. I was,
And so here we are.
yeah. We love nature. We love where we live. We love all people that we know, people that we don't know, and we just don't want to see it destroyed. We moved to Harmony when our children were young because we didn't want them to grow up in town. We wanted them to be out in nature and be outside. And we now have a granddaughter that just graduated from college, and she's now an environmental planner. So it all runs in the family. And of course, we want to put a stop to the warehouse. But a real important thing in this whole picture is no matter what the outcome, we have met and become friends with so many wonderful people. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And here's our inspiration right here.
So now what some people really came for, the 2022 Small Grants Awards, where, I'm missing, sorry, skipping ahead.
We're not that late. I think it was just 3 years ago, this young man just graduated from, got his master's degree in sustainability, came to us for a job. And I don't think he had any idea what he was getting into. And he didn't really know much about the Highlands and advocacy. And within 6 months, he was a champion. And he happened to be the liaison with the Natural Heritage Committee when forestry issue really took off. And he really disciplined that group and made it into what it is today. So Zach, will you please come up? Zach made such a mark on this organization that when he left to go to the trail conference, I wondered how we would get along without him. And still, I wonder how we get along without him. But he keeps his ties with us. He does hikes with us, and he's been a great member. So this is presented to Zachary Cole for his leadership during his tenure as New Jersey Highlands Coalition's Outreach and Education Director in transforming the Natural Heritage Committee into a formidable science and policy think tank, protecting the ecological values of the 320 square mile Highlands core forest and advocating for the protection of the resource values of all of New Jersey's publicly owned forests, with thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the Highlands.
Wow. I'll just say thank you very much to June Elliott for the opportunity to contribute to such a spectacular organization. Thank you to Brielle for the time we worked together as well. And thank you to all of you, the members of the coalition. It's a force multiplied. A real privilege to work with everybody. So thank you again.
And I would like to point out, it's taken a little while, but Dylan is no longer known as the new Zach. He is definitely Dylan. He's up there.
About 10 years ago, we were part of, I wouldn't quite call it a forest task force, but we were working with Senator Smith on forest legislation for both publicly owned land and privately owned land. He succeeded in passing legislation for privately owned land. But we were part of the group that was working towards policies, legislation for public lands. And we bought the Kool-Aid that you can log forests for conservation purposes if there is a ecological benefit or a net benefit. And we bought that Kool-Aid. But it was, at that point, the organization known as Friends of Sparta Mountain kept tugging at our shirt sleeves and said, no, it's not what's going on. You have to take a look at what's really going on. And they convinced us to stop our support for where this was leading. And Senator Smith has not forgiven us for that. And he did not pass, legislation did not go any further. That's why he has appointed a task force. So it really is because of the seminal work of what has now become known as New Jersey Forest Watch, that we are in this battle until we prevail, and we're not giving up. And it's because of the tenacious spirit of Sylvia and Ken and Catherine that we're here today. So Sylvia and Ken, Catherine's not here, but please come up. So this is presented to Sylvia Colon, Catherine Evans, and Ken Dolsky as leaders of New Jersey Forest Watch for their uncompromising and continuing advocacy for policies and regulations that are protective of the ecological values of New Jersey's publicly owned forests and to elevate carbon capture and storage as the foremost values in the protection and stewardship of our public forests. With thanks and great appreciation from all who love and value the natural and cultural resources of the Highlands. And this is for all of New Jersey forests.
So this forest task force that we're on, and Laura's on it as well, and Sarah, yes, a number of people are on it. This has been incredibly challenging for a number of reasons. You wouldn't really think how hard it would be in order to get change. We have leaders of this task force appointed by Senator Smith, who first of all don't have the faintest idea how to reach compromise and consensus. So that's one problem. You then have a set of issues that are very, very complicated. Sarah touched on some of that in her presentation. Not only do you have the forest, you have invasives, you have deer, you have a lot of different issues and people with different focuses and all trying to come together. So it's very difficult to work out. And third, we have our own internal organization. We have the Natural Heritage Committee, which has been known to be, let's say, as challenging as as herding cats when we try to actually come together and get something agreed upon in a reasonable amount of time. But I do have to say that Julia and Elliot, particularly Julia, has been exceptional in terms of being supportive, being available, dialoguing, whenever we need it, to talk about how do we move forward and to make sure that we have good communication, understand each other, give frank feedback occasionally. I've been recipient of a lot of that. And so I receive it. Yes, I understand it and I welcome it. Sometimes I even listen to it. But it has been very, very helpful to have the support of the Highlands Coalition and particularly of Julia and Elliot working with us all and trying to make us into an organization that's more than some of its parts. So thank you both very much.
I want to thank everybody. This is an award that comes with all the support that we have. We're a small group, but I'd like to say we're mighty, right? And if there's ever a time in New Jersey history, it's a time for all of us to work together to save what precious resources we have. And I can't tell you enough, that's what really grows in me every day. And I've told Julia and probably Elliot the story, but living on Sparta Mountain, I heard, I think it was you, Linda, that said, when you go to a place where you feel that you're at home, like you're on vacation all the time, that's what drew me to the Highlands. And that's what continues to drive me in saving these beautiful, contiguous, intact forests. And so when I see all the logging that's still being planned, it's hard not to really take it personally, right? And then I often say, well, why is it we as a people, we can agree that when we talk about deforestation in other countries, or we talk about it, in the Amazon, for example, we say, oh, that's horrible. That shouldn't be happening. But here in the most densely populated state of New Jersey, it's okay. It's spun as conservation. Or we're actually creating, Sarah said this, we're creating habitat. Or you'll hear even, oh, this is for the health of the forest. I will tell you right here, what is happening on Sparta Mountain should be the example of what not to do throughout the state and for any place nationwide. Our resources are something that need to be protected. We need to honor them. We as taxpayers, when you think of it from a financial aspect, we've paid to protect these public lands. Why are we allowing those precious resources to be sold so private interests can make money? It is wrong. And the one thing my parents always instilled in us children, I'm from a family of 5. My mother was from a family of 10. She had 10 siblings. And my father was from a smaller family, but we all grew with this principle. And that is, if something is wrong and you see it and you don't speak up or do something to change it, you're part of that problem. And so I encourage all of you, because we need us to be together. We need to work together. We need to protect these precious resources. So please be part of the solution. Sounds like many of you are, and thank you. Thank you for your service. The world needs it. We need it. Our children need it. And I thank you.
So we're nearly there. Mike, where are you? Mr. Katie. Think you can? You can still get your way up here? Mike Katie is the chair of our Small Grants Committee, which is the committee that everybody wants to sit on because it's fun and they give away money.
We don't have plaques to give away, but we do have grants of up to $5,000. We've been doing this for well over a decade now. And I think it's one of the most important things that we do. And most of what has happened today helps to underline why that's true. It's important to be playing at the big boy level down in Trenton. And that's what Elliot does all the time. And to have the new associate director, the new executive director of the Highlands Council to know him. But the most important thing is the other side of the whole organization, where small groups of citizens, mostly people who never wanted to do this kind of stuff, but suddenly some developer comes in and says, I'm going to put up this big ugly thing, whatever it is, and you have a choice as whether you're just going to acquiesce or whether you're going to do something about it. And so we've given away over the past few years a lot of money that has gone to small groups. Now, $5,000 isn't going to win the battle, but it's enough to prime the pump and get it started. And I think a lot of the people here, got started from those kind of. Okay, I've got a list here of the people who won the awards all this year. It's even I can remember it. It's 3 groups that won, and Julia, you know the people who were here, so I'll tell you who the groups are and briefly what they did. Well, the first, Citizens for Sustainable Development. This is the White Township group fighting the warehouses, et cetera. So I don't think I need to say anything more. We've heard a lot about what they're doing tonight.
Okay, so Tom Pelsky had to leave because he actually has to go to work. But Linda Van Sellers is going to accept the award on behalf of Citizens for Sustainability.
Okay. You want to say
I don't know if you want to say anything with it. We actually don't have a check to give her. The check's in the mail.
Thank you. Everyone in Citizens Sustainable. We're working real hard, trying our best, and we're so grateful to the Highlands for all the support they've given us.
I have to tell you, Jandal never expected this. He's the biggest, one of the biggest warehouse developers in the Lehigh Valley. When you go to the Lehigh Valley and you see these miles of white warehouses, that's Jandal. And I think he thought that this little town wouldn't know what to do with it, and he'd be in and out in just less than a year. 3 years plus, and he still is in front of the planning board, and he still has important planning board testimony to present, and the opposition will be presenting its own testimony. It's remarkable what they do and have done. So they are an astonishing small group.
He is such such an asset to our group. He's a professional engineer, so he's been able to accomplish
I'm sad that Tom couldn't be here. He is and knows he is and likes to be a curmudgeon. But I think he's astonished himself. He's made a lot of friends in this process. He lives and breathes every hour he is awake dealing with this project. Along the way, he also works for me, but
But he was only pretending to be a curmudgeon. After the group that's been doing this for 3 years, the next recipient of one of our small grants just started up this year in 2022, and that's the Mendham Alliance for Preservation and Conservation. What they're doing is opposing a decision made already by the township's governing body to rezone an area of town that was already fully built out at the size of the lots they had, but they made smaller lots, and magically that means you can get more houses out of it. And unfortunately for them, this property is adjacent to sensitive wetlands, and it's at the headwaters of the Passaic River. And so they managed to stir up a lot of opposition in town.
so Frank, would you like to come up? This is Frank Zamatara. Did I get it right? Zamatara. Sorry.
Nice Irish name.
Yes. And this is the first time I've actually met him in person. It's really cool. So we're delighted to be able to support them. The work that they're doing is actually trying to protect the headwaters of 3 river systems. So Frank.
Well, on behalf of the Preservation and Conservation, I'd like to thank the New Jersey Highlands Coalition for the recognition and for all the efforts that we've done to date and this generous award. Most importantly, and I think somebody else said this, the advice and guidance that we're getting from Julie. She's really a treasure. We're so happy to have this relationship. At this stage, we've been very reactive, but we're hoping to get more proactive. And I think we have some great ideas on how to preserve Mendham Township and Mendham Borough for future generations. So thank you again.
You know, I've been around doing stuff like this for 20 years now. And I think one of the reasons that I continue doing it is I have a feeling I got to pay back. People like Julia and lots of others who were the people, my wife and I started fighting a large development like most of the people here. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to become an environmentalist and hire lawyers and engineers. But something's going to happen, and so you do something about it. And here I am 20 years later, I'm feeling, and I say this to people when they get one of our grants, that I hope you'll pay it back. I hope you win, and then you don't walk away and say goodbye and gee, thanks, that was wonderful, all the advice. You owe it now to be helping the next person who's about to be violated. Finally, we have in the small grants a group that's been doing it longer than most everybody that we're still working with, the Wallkill Headwaters Association. And they're the group that's been fighting a development called Millie's Court for more than 5 years now. It's got about, if you wanted to have a contest for all of the things you'd be doing wrong to a piece of land, this might win it because it's got wildlife habitat, woodlands, forest integrity, streams that are already in deficit that they're going to pump some more water out. So we're happy to keep funding them, and God bless that they're lasting so long in the fight.
Ian Sherwood could not be here, but honestly, they deserve everybody's salute because they haven't given up. They're still in there. And I am hoping that some of the things Ben said to us today will also affect the outcome of that water quality management plan. We helped both Citizens for Sustainable Development and the Wallkill Headwaters Association prepare comments in opposition for those water quality management plan amendments this year. And they put together a wonderful presentation. So really great comments. So we're hopeful. And so the check will be in the mail to Ian too. Right. So I would like Mark to come up and deal with our quick election of new trustees and officers. And I wanted to say, when we have a small reception for you outside with some beer and some wine and some food and some good cheer, and we hope you will all be with us for a while. And then anybody who would like to join us, we're going to Portofino's for dinner. Portofino's is expecting quite a lot of us, and a number of you told me you were coming, so I'm looking forward to having dinner with you. But first.
Thank you, Madam Director. All right, as you all know, this is our annual meeting of the Board of Trustees. So for all of you who are members of the Board of Trustees, I'd like your attention for 3 little items that stand between us and enjoying our wine and cheese. The first is a nomination of individuals to serve as first term to our Board of Trustees. The floor is open to nominations, and I would welcome a motion from a trustee to support the slate of nominees that has been presented to all of you. You'll find it on the back of your agenda. The names that our Board Governance Committee has recommended to you to serve, and I'll repeat them for you. Sandy Batty, who's a returning trustee, Teresa Bender Chapman, Michael Henderson, Ned Kirby, the Honorable Michael Soriano, Winifred Victor Hines, and those are all the names. Well, we'll get to that one as the next motion. We have a motion, John Donahue. We have a second. All right. All in favor of the adoption of this slate of candidates as our nominees for trustee, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that is our slate of first year trustees. Now, for second year terms, trustees returning to a second year, the Board Governance Committee recommends that the Board of Trustees acknowledge and accept David Budd, John Donahue, Jim Gilbert. Some people never learn. Just keep coming back. I'm teasing Jim. Dwight Hiscano and Mike Cady to their second 3-year term on the board. May I hear such a motion? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All right. All in favor of the adoption of those individuals to, of this motion, which would elect those individuals to a second-year term, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. They are all elected. They have my sympathy. And then, finally, we would like to elect a slate of officers to the board for the upcoming year. As president, the Board Governance Committee has nominated David Budd, as first vice president, Jessica Murphy, and as treasurer, Laura Altman. Yeah. So are there any other nominations from the floor? And hearing none, I'll close the nominations. All in favor of the acceptance of these nominations from the Board Governance Committee to elect these 3 individuals as our officers for next year, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? It is unanimous. Congratulations, officers. You have my best wishes. It's been a wonderful year.
And then it would be terrible for me not to recognize 3 people who, because we have term limits for our Board of Trustees, you can serve 2 3-year terms consecutively, but then you must go off the board, although often we don't let them go very far or for very long. But we will be losing Mark Lobauer, our current president, Jean Rich, and Lee Wallace. All 3 have done a fantastic time of service. I think Jean and Lee have at this point served 4 terms, and Mark has served 2 terms, and we really want them back. But you have to take a year off. We really owe them a huge debt of gratitude. And I want to say personally, Mark has been a spectacular person to work with. I have never, ever had him turn me down or say, why are you calling me at this time of day? Or, he's always been incredibly supportive and given me great advice. And you can't have him because I want him back. He's just a spectacular human being. So thank you all very much. And thank you all for coming and for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. Till next year.